Okay, these are the, excuse me, the ribbon winning images. It was interesting. We had quite a few first place ties. This,
Kevin, these are all first place?
these are honorable
Okay.
honorable mentions, yes.
Okay, I missed that.
7 first places. Okay, all the next are all first place images. Okay. We can show the award of merit images from December,
Okay,
if you'd like, and that.
for those who may be new to tripod meetings, and I see we have a few, the awards of merit are given by one of our more experienced club members to recognize images that aren't recognized in the competition, but still have a lot of great qualities. And that's what they're given the equivalent of an honorable mention. And that's what Kevin's going to be showing us now.
Get the. Okay, there were just 3 in this. The combined is I just combine all the images from the 3 competitions.
So I just want to say thanks to all the judges and to Bob Hawkins, our vice president. Bob assembles our judging crew and organizes our competition. I also want to say thanks to Kevin Morano he sets up Photo Contest Pro and puts together all the results for us. So thanks to both those guys. And Paul, are you ready to do a critique?
All set. See if I can share this here. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, I picked a few from Nature and Open to talk about. And like last time, on some of them, I downloaded them and then did the changes that I'm going to talk about just to better see what I'm saying, see if you like it. So I'll start with this one. And this one I didn't modify later, but I just wanted to point out, I don't know if you can see around where my mouse is right now, there's a vertical line here. There's snow around here. It got a whole bunch of spots, I'll call them, little tiny spots. And because they're right around where my eyes go, which are to his eyes, it's very obvious. This is usually an artifact of over modifying it in Photoshop. It was maybe dark back there, and when you bring up the shadows or you change the brightness dramatically either way, it can break up and turn into these dots. So just be careful when you're doing that, because this is a great picture, I think. But it didn't win a ribbon, and I don't know, perhaps that's why. Just something to watch when you're doing your photos and getting them ready for competition. Here's one I thought, oops, too much. I thought was terrific. Not sure, I mean, if I had been judging, I probably would have scored it enough to win. This isn't a shadows picture, this is just open. But I like the tones in it. It's well processed. I like the sky manipulation so that it's blurred and my eye isn't distracted by the sky, but yet it's not empty of information back there. The low angle makes it dramatic. So I thought that was a really well composed and good image, well processed. Try it again next year, maybe. Here's a tough shot to get. Yeah, someone has had some practice at panning with flying birds, it looks like, and they got two of them together. Look how one is in front of the other, but yet the depth of field is plenty. From front to back, everything's in focus. It looks great. But I believe the birds feel a little dark, and maybe could be brighter, and maybe that would have helped. When the brightest part of the image, which actually kind of is this water, takes your eye, well, then it takes away from the subject. So I went into Lightroom, or you can use Adobe Camera Raw, and made those changes. Can you see the difference? Okay, so bring out the birds even more, and so my eyes definitely go to the birds, I think more so now. And all of the changes that I've made in all of the images here were just in Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, not going into Photoshop. Here's another good action shot. Now, depending on your image resolution, your screen resolution, the head of the loon might be a little out of focus. No, I think I've expanded it here just to fill the screen. But perhaps the judges wanted to see more of the wings, or sometimes they like it a little more facing the camera. But I think for me, the bright background is fairly distracting. So actually, you could crop in, because I don't think that context of the background is necessary. And that's probably what I should have done. But what I did instead was just darken it. So using the graduated filter in Lightroom, there's the difference before and after. And that's all I did, is just darken that. Because, again, your eye is going to go to the brightest spot. So at least this keeps the, the viewer on the loon. Another good shot. Saw a lot of action here on this this week, but I mean, the water's been frozen in motion. Kind of tells a story, but I just wondered if the rest of the hippos were required, if maybe a different crop would help. So I did this because that's the real story, and I don't think that takes away anything from the story. In fact, it makes the hippo appear larger when in fact it isn't. But another thing I noticed when I did this is, again, this might be too subtle for your screens, but there's some what I call crunchiness up at the top and maybe around the water where it's been sharpened to, of course, make it look sharper. But I think it's gone too far. And so what I did, if you can see now, can you tell the difference between these two? Dan, maybe you can answer tell me if you're muted.
I can definitely tell a difference.
Okay.
What did you do there?
So actually what I did here was just take the clarity back down. So the clarity went negative about 40 units, whatever that is. And I think from that to that, it still looks sharp to me. The water looks a little more natural, maybe not quite so crunchy as that. So again, watch for over sharpening. Nice scene. Look at that reflection. That's very good. Not easy to do to get down low enough to get the mountain in the water. It has a good leading line, nice color everywhere. But I wonder if maybe it didn't do as well as it could have because there's so much empty sky. Really unnecessary for the impact of the image because it's all about the reflection and the mountains back there. So I just cropped in, and what that does, if you can tell, has two benefits really, which help for judging, and that is watch how much wider the picture gets. Okay, so it's going to take up more real estate on the judge's screen, or if we were back in the lodge, even on the projector, it would take up more real estate. So it will have more impact. It will look, hit you in the face more. And I don't think it loses anything. In fact, I think it is improved by less sky. I also darkened the sky just a little bit. This I thought was very clever. It took me a while before I noticed the tail is out here too, and I'm sure that was on purpose. But my guess is this didn't score better because it is basically one tone of light gray. Very clever positioning of the deer, but there's so much tree, which really isn't the story. It's the deer behind it, and it's almost all one tone. That's probably what hurt it there. Now here's a shot that looks good at first glance. Obviously a long exposure to soften that water, which I love. I think that's my favorite way to see waterfalls. But when I look at this, for some reason, I wish I was more over to the right, or the camera photographer had been more to the right to see the falls sort of coming at us. And that seems picky, but maybe also because there's just so much rock in the foreground, which again is not the subject of this photograph, right? It's all about these falls, I believe. So what I did was cropped it, and that takes out some of the rock. I believe it gives a more diagonal line in the image and makes you focus on the water some more. And I believe that improves it. But coincidentally, the same person or someone with them was at the same location, and they did move to the right, and this was also entered. And I think that it helps you see what I was talking about from the side versus head on. I think this has a lot more impact. Perhaps this should have been cropped from the left as well. I like this shot though. I think that's very nice, well exposed, given that water gets awfully bright when you slow down the shutter and compared to the dark rock. So I think it's well processed and nice framing there. I couldn't improve on this. I thought this was great. I love these kinds of street portraiture, if you want to call it that, street photography. I don't mind this extra space to the left of the lady. I think that kind of tells a story. It puts her in context. I think the lighting's good. This might have worked in shadows, although they're not prominent. But I think that was really cool. Now here's a good nature. I don't know if this is in nature or open, but it's a shot of nature, and I think it looks pretty good. The squirrels in sharp focus, which is what you want. But why didn't this score as well? My guess is It's the close proximity of these leaves to his face. And that creates a little tension. It's a little strange. It feels like you want the squirrel to move, or you wanted the photographer to move a little to the right. And maybe the blurred leaf down here that goes into his foot is distraction, but actually up here by his face is what catches my eye immediately. So what I did was, in Lightroom, don't even need Photoshop, and oops, too far, and it can remove that. Same with it down at the bottom here. I removed some of the bottom, but it's amazing how the quick replacement tool can take care of little things like that, and you get to pick what spots are used to overlay, in this case, the leaf, and that helps him stand out and gets rid of that tension a little bit. Also, I would probably have vignetted the entire thing to take down the lower right brightness, the bottom brightness, and the left. Again, not really part of the scene, part of the story. Story seems to be the flower and the squirrel. Jump in if anyone has any questions, jump in at any time, by the way.
Paul, did you use content aware fill, or how did you do that?
No, that's just the Lightroom. The quick replacement tool, I think it's called. That might not be the exact term. I'll show you when I'm done here. But no, I tried to do everything without going into Photoshop. And it is essentially, yeah, and it's not really content aware fill, but I'll show you when we're done. Beautiful, nice and simple. To me, for some reason, it's going to break my rules where your eye goes to the brightest spot. Although that might have helped if that was darker. I can't, my eyes just keep going back and forth between these flowers. I think that's great. But there is, again, a lot of unused, or as they call it, negative space on the right that doesn't seem to be a part of the story. So I just cropped it, and definitely your eyes are now focused on those flowers, even maybe more so because in spite of that white area. Another image, I don't know how I would improve. I think that's terrific. Not easy to do. Crisp sharpness and where you want it to be, which is the eyes, and even down here on the leaf that he's on. So it's well lit. I like that a lot. Try it again next year. Don't be discouraged if your images don't win and you like it. It's just the luck of the draw sometimes. As Bill Woody always says, judging is all about perspective and the background of the judge. Some will like macro, some will like portraits, some won't. Here's a really good shot as far as composition and the blurred background. There's absolutely no distractions in that picture, but at least on my screen, the eye and the head is not exactly perfectly in focus, and that may have hurt it. When you're doing stuff like this, that eye of the animal needs to be absolutely sharp. And actually, if the maker did not use the texture slider in Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom for this, it's worth a try. And you can use the brush and paint over just that area, so that's the only part that gets affected by the texture, and it is amazing how it can improve some sharpness. Last one here, I think, is a very nice shot that gives you an idea of where they were, a mountain in context with the forest. It's framed by this tree on the left. I believe those trees on left and right were on purpose, and even the evergreens on the top. So the framing is good. Honestly, I think this just comes down to impact. And if you remember some of the winning images tonight, you can see it. It's difficult to compete with a good nature landscape like this without more impact. So there's nothing to be ashamed of here or even correct, but maybe it doesn't work in competition because of the impact. So let me, yeah, that's the last one. So I'll go back real quick to the squirrel and show you. All right, so I need to, now, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
On the right here. So this tool, so spot removal. Just click on that. Now I'm in Lightroom, obviously. The same thing is in Adobe Camera Raw. And you can see all these little dots, each one representing different things I replaced. I just brushed on it and I'll do a spot, let's say over here on the right. Get rid of that stem. You paint and it will choose a spot to replace it, but you can then move that to wherever you like. Okay, so that's all I did multiple times here and here, and went from that to this.
Okay,
And that's all.
thank you, Paul. Does
all-
anyone have any questions for Paul or want to comment on any of those images?
I wanted to comment on two. I thought everything Paul said was on the money, except the loon. And in the loon, he only suggested that the background could be trimmed. And I would suggest that if you whack that everything green out of the top of that and just leave the green in the water, it would increase the focus on that perfect loon incredibly. So crop it again, Paul. Go ahead and crop what you suggested and say, there. It doesn't have to be square. It can be long. Oh my God. You know, that loon pops up off the water in a really gorgeous way.
Yeah, and that's all it need. I mean,
You suggested that, but you didn't do it. You did other
Yeah.
things to it. Darkening is 10% of what you just did to this image.
yeah, yeah.
The other one I wanted to comment on was the two pelicans in a dive. Whoever made that, a great shot. You broke a bunch of rules. Paul helped you with the brightness, but the rules are, you know, birds aren't supposed to overlap. They're supposed to be isolated, and you're not supposed to have two. You're supposed to have three. You probably ran into both of those issues with the judges. That, you know, we have those rules that we live by. Forget that crap. This is a great image as it is. Celebrate it.
Yeah, see, I didn't even know those rules.
You didn't know those? Oh yeah.
I would have scored it real high.
Yeah. Well, I would have too. But
Yeah.
but there are people
Oh, yeah.
whose notion is when you got objects in a picture, you know, they should be an odd number. It's an
Yeah.
old PSA rule, Paul.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And oh, by the way, they shouldn't overlap or touch. If you got similar objects in a picture, they ought to be separated. And those aren't bad things to think about. But let me tell you, if you got a picture like this, oh my God, it's great.
Like we did a program, Bill, you know, years ago, talking about breaking the rules, like
We
center.
did. We did. And those are some of the rules that, you know, you ought to feel free to break. At least I do. Of course, when you feel free to break the rules and you run up against a judge who lives by them, you lose because he's got the judging box.
Yeah,
Neither here nor there. You know, this is a great shot.
yeah. You just never know. So, you know, it's worth doing.
Yeah.